we should just come back to the observation that the enemy is not the government. The enemy is property. The enemy is alternate property. Now, with regard to Bitcoin and property rights in general, my view there is I think Bitcoiners angst a lot about this more than they need to. There's like $750 trillion of property in this world that's owned by non-Bitcoin people that have lesser rights than the worst case for Bitcoin. Like if you try to figure out what is the worst case for Bitcoin over the next decade, the worst case for Bitcoin might be right now, as far as I can see, it's like if you take custody of all your Bitcoin off the exchange, you have to admit that you took it. Okay, that's like you have to say, I wired 20 Bitcoin to myself. Okay, and there's a disclosure. That's the worst case. And now you have the Bitcoin and you could have it in any of 100,000 counterparties. You can send it anywhere in 30 minutes and you've got it on a hardware device or you've got it on any device, okay? Now, I want you to think about that worst case. And now I want you to think about the best case for the equivalent amount of gold, silver, property, equity, Apple stock, government bonds, corporate bonds, collectibles, art. Now tell me, is there anything else on earth that you would rather be holding than Bitcoin that you admitted to the government that you hold? I mean, try making your building in the middle of Manhattan disappear in a boating accident. You know what I mean?
Happening.
It's not happening. So I think that, by the way, try making your yacht disappear in a boating accident, okay? The point really is, I think that the Bitcoin community is very smart. They're very smart and they're very paranoid. And to paraphrase Andy Grove, only the paranoid survive. That's good. That's why I love them. I love all the Bitcoins, right? And I love the hodlers and I really appreciate all the thought that goes into defending the network, defending the asset class. But I think from a practical point of view, right, the conclusion you come to is every other piece of property, everything else in the crypto ecosystem, everything in the non-crypto ecosystem is inferior to hold under any possible outcome than Bitcoin is right now. So the answer is you ought to just buy Bitcoin. You ought to hold Bitcoin. You ought to tell everybody else to hold Bitcoin. And then when you consider, how do you feel about someone, all these things? Well, I mean, the answer is, this is a twisty one, it turns out that you can fight really, really hard, take the extreme anarchist libertarian point of view to protect all 6,500 cryptos, right? I should be able to create my own Dogecoin, yo-yo coin. That's a currency, that's a privacy coin, that's a security that gives yield that I can send to anybody, right? That's the extreme libertarian view. You could take that view to protect Bitcoin. On the other hand, you might be hurting yourself, because if all those things disappeared tomorrow, the money would probably flow into Bitcoin. So you see, it's a very interesting situation. I think, I don't think we have to fear the government. Not right now, like maybe in a decade. If you look at right now, most of people concerned about regulation in the Bitcoin community, they're extrapolating from an altcoin. Like there's an altcoiner that was issued by some group of people that are going and they're running to the Bitcoin community saying, if the SEC regulates us as a security, or we can't keep doing whatever we're doing, then they'll come for you next. Well, no, I don't think they will. They won't come for us next. Like if someone's running an illegal boiler room pump and dump scheme to defraud the general public and the SEC says you got to stop, I don't think that's a threat to Bitcoin, right? So I think that we overreact and we don't need to overreact. I don't really see any initiative that prevents anybody from owning Bitcoin as digital property, right? And I think almost if you cloak yourself with every other altcoin, you undermine your case for digital property. I don't think you improve it. And I think we should just come back to the observation that the enemy is not the government. The enemy is property. The enemy is alternate property. If there's $750 trillion worth of money invested in global equities, 300 billion in debt, right? 120 billion in global equity, 300 billion in real estate. All of that stuff has inferior property rights to Bitcoin. So all you have to do is just cheerfully educate the world as to why they're building their ranch land, their oil well drilling rights, all of those things, all their intellectual property is inferior to Bitcoin. It's all inferior to Bitcoin, right? And And within any ecosystem, if you're in Venezuela, Bitcoin is the best property in Venezuela. I don't have an opinion about the government. In Turkey, Bitcoin is the best property in Turkey. I don't have to have an opinion about the government. In Argentina, Bitcoin is the best property in Argentina. In the US, Bitcoin is the best property in the US. In China, Bitcoin is the best property, right? Now, how do you feel about capital controls, wage controls, price controls, labor controls, political laws, religious laws? Everybody's got stuff that they could disagree with. But if you choose to disagree with all those things, right, you're going to be in conflict with a lot of people that aren't against Bitcoin. You're just turning them in, right? Right? Like, when you go to an Islamic country, right, Bitcoin is neither Christian nor Islamic, right? Like, you don't really want to get into that.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
When you go to any country, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican, right? It's not this or that. It's just better property than the alternative property. I think the only place in the world where a person who's pro-Bitcoin is in conflict with the government is in a true communist regime. If you're in a regime where the ethos of the government is private property or individual ownership of all property is illegal, right? There's a few, right? Maybe like North Korea, Cuba. In the Soviet regime in Russia, right? In theory, no one could own anything, right? And that changed. But people can own property in China. They can own property in Russia. There are a lot of political regimes which are different. As long as it's legal to own property, then instead of fighting the battle, like instead of saying, well, I want to topple securities law, or I want to change the tax code, I want to change the security code, I want to change the political system. Instead of fighting that battle, I think just fight one battle, which is Bitcoin is better property than an acre of land. It's better property than 37 donkeys. It's better property than a lump of gold, right? Is it legal to make a decision to own 100 donkeys instead of a stack of corn, instead of an acre of land, instead of a Bitcoin? If it is, then 99% of the solution to our problem is go find the people that own oil wells and own natural gas fields and own farmland and own tall buildings and cities and own too many cars and own stuff, and convince them to sell that stuff or mortgage that stuff and buy Bitcoin. And how should you do it? Well, within the system that you live in, right? Respect the laws and respect the culture of the society you live in. But by all means, don't invest in 100 donkeys. Don't invest in a bar of gold. The government doesn't have a law that says you have to have 100% of your assets in the local currency, right? Like, there aren't very many. By the way, when they get there, that's kind of like getting close to communism. So something.
Do you think we are going there? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask on that.
No, I don't think we're going there. I think that we spend a lot of time worrying about that, and I just think it's a waste of time and energy. I think there's a lot of fighting about about who can come up with a bigger doomsday scenario than the next person. It's like, yeah, it's colorful. I mean, it'll get you like some engagement on Twitter, but no, I think, again, what's the total value of all assets in the United States other than Bitcoin that's called an asset or a property, right? And so if you're talking to the public, right, I think the battle you want to fight is to persuade people that owning a Bitcoin is better than owning a corporate bond. Owning a Bitcoin is better than owning a small building, right? Just all you're doing is trading up weak assets for strong asset. I think, and leave the politic. Like, we can fight over tax, right? We can. But now you're a politician. Like, you have an opinion about, how the tax system should work. That's a political decision. You can fight over currency. That's a political decision. The irony, what I've said before is what's going to happen, as far as I can see, is that US dollar is going to run on stable coin. And when that gets released in size by an FDIC approved bank, the stablecoin business is going to go from 180 billion to $1 trillion to 10 trillion. And when that happens, it's going to collapse the currencies of like 30 countries that will remain nameless. And when the currencies collapse because everybody basically sells that local currency to buy the dollar, Wouldn't you rather just have, the mainstream media write stories about how the State Department is explaining to the ambassador from such and such that we're sorry that their citizens have adopted the dollar instead of the local currency? I mean, leave it to the State Department, right? Leave it to the government, right? Do you really want to be on the hook? If the choice was pick a country, the US dollarize that country, or Bitcoinize that country.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.